Let's talk about Mickey 17. I went and saw Mickey 17 this weekend, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. If you're not familiar with Mickey 17, it's Bong Joon Ho's newest film. He made a little movie called Parasite, which you might have heard of. Won the Oscar for Best Picture and a lot of other categories in 2019. And he hasn't made a movie since then. And so everyone was kind of wondering what his follow up project would be to the huge success that was Parasite. And it turned out it was Mickey 17. And we've kind of known about this project for a long time, partially because it was supposed to come out like a year ago. Warner Brothers kept pushing the release date around. Might have some ideas as to why that was, but it was supposed to come out like a year ago, and then it was shelved indefinitely, and then it was going to come out like later this year, like in a month or two. But then it got moved forward to March, so a bit of a mess trying to get this released, which was surprising and I think concerning to people who hadn't seen it yet, obviously, because you would think it would be like that. You think you would not want to screw this up, right? If you're Warner Brothers, like you've got Bong Joon Ho's next film, there's a lot of people excited for it. He obviously got a huge amount of buzz at the Oscars when he won, so there's a lot more people anticipating his follow up. So you would think you would try to, I don't know, get that movie out like as soon as possible and not have too many concerns about it because of all the positive buzz that he's had, but wasn't the case. Ultimately, turns out it came out this weekend. And as much as I love Parasite, like that was my favorite movie of that year. It's a movie that I would rank very high on my all-time list. I'm not super familiar with Bong Joon-ho's other films. The only other one I've seen is Snowpiercer, which I watched after seeing Parasite, because a lot of people said, "Oh, you got to see Snowpiercer." I honestly think I was a bit lower on Snowpiercer than most people were, and maybe I should go back and rewatch it because I did only watch it one time. And this seeing Mickey 17 kind of made me want to go back and revisit that and see if my opinion changed at all. But Mickey 17 is definitely, of the two movies that I've seen of his, closer to Snowpiercer than it was Parasite. In like tones and presentation and stuff like that. That's not necessarily a quality assessment there. Because I did like Mickey 17 a lot. I don't know that I liked it as much as Parasite, but I think I liked it more than Snowpiercer. I think it's a very good movie. And it's a very good movie that is carried by Robert Pattinson. I won't say carried because that implies like he's the only good actor, good performance, but it really depends on Robert Pattinson, and to nobody's shock, or what should be to nobody's shock, he kills it. He's got a weird voice, which already should be reason to buy a ticket. But he plays an interesting character. Mickey is a pretty interesting guy. He's a bit simple, which I think might have kind of inspired Robert Pattinson's voice here. But if you've seen the trailer, you know that there's also a point where there's two Mickeys, and therefore there's two Robert Pattinsons giving two different performances. And he kills every second of that. There's one scene in particular where there's like a shouting match between Mickey 17 and Mickey 18. And really it's like Mickey 18 yelling at Mickey 17, who's kind of taking it more so than giving it back. And he absolutely kills it in both roles. He's an absolute delight to watch, which of course is nothing new if you're following, if you've been following Big Movie Boys at all. We've been on the Robert Pattinson train for quite a while, and even for this movie, looking through the Letterboxd reviews, a lot of people mentioning Cedric Diggory, a lot of people mentioning John Twilight, or whoever he plays in Twilight. And I understand those are maybe his most known characters. But this man has been doing great work for the past decade, outside of those two franchises. And so I would highly recommend, if you're still in the oh, he's the Twilight guy or he's Cedric Diggory, that you watch some of the other movies he's been in. I could see, I alluded earlier to like maybe understanding why they had such a hard time picking a release date. And I do think that it could be because they were unsure of what the audience reception was going to be for this movie. Because even though I liked it a lot, even though I think it's very good, even though I would recommend going to see it and going to see it on a very big screen because it was shot in IMAX, it is a pretty strange movie. There's a lot of different tones. There's a lot of different things happening. People described it as a mix of a lot of different genres. And so that could potentially be off-putting for your average moviegoer. But I think it all worked together in the end. I don't think that anything like conflicted with each other. I think there's just kind of a lot happening. Invincible, yeah. So that's actually I got a few criticisms, pretty minor. You know, like I said, I liked it, so ultimately nothing that ruined the movie for me. But there's not a lot of Steven Yeun. I would have liked to see more of him. Everything we do kind of see of him is really just in relation to Mickey, and like we get a little bit of flashback, we get a little bit of him on this shit. He's good when he's there, and it's serviceable, but I just wanted more, is ultimately, I think, what it comes down to. There's one kind of logical inconsistency that I won't get into because it might be a little bit spoilery, but there's a conversation that's had between Mickey 17 and Mickey 18. If you've seen the trailer, you see that they see that they're duplicates and that is a problem, and they have a conversation about how to potentially resolve that problem, but it didn't really make sense to me. And maybe I missed something. Maybe there was a line of dialogue earlier that would have made it make sense. But from what I understood of the whole him being expendable and being reprinted and how that process all works, their solution didn't really make much sense to me. Mark Ruffalo is a lot of fun in this. He's definitely more like his character in Poor Things from last year than, Bruce Banner or some other roles that he's been in. He's pretty goofy, he's pretty wacky, as are most of the characters in this movie. He's also been, he plays like a failed politician who's now kind of leading this ship and this new colony. And there's been a lot of comparisons of him to Trump, some of which are very seemingly intentional in the movie. Others, Bong Joon-ho and Mark Ruffalo have come out and said, like, no, this character isn't a parody of Trump. But there are certainly Trump influences in this that really can't be denied. And there's also a moment where I think they predicted the future. And I won't spoil what I mean by that exactly, but obviously this movie was shot quite a while ago, before certain events that took place in the real world happened. But then they happened in this movie with their Trump-like character. So that was pretty interesting. I haven't heard any reasoning or any like background information as to how that came to be, or if Bong Joon-ho or anyone else involved has made a comment on the similarities between what happened in the movie and what happened in real life. But it was something that I think anyone watching this who has paid even the slightest bit of attention to the presidential election last year will be like, okay, that seems like a direct reference to something that wouldn't have happened yet at the time of filming this movie. I think there's, like I said, the difference in tones and things I don't think is an issue. I think it just pulls a lot of inspiration from a lot of different places, including like Bong Joon-ho's own work. There's a lot of themes that carry over from both Parasite and Snowpiercer, and apparently some of his other work as well. It's definitely slapsticky and humorous at points. It's pretty Starship Troopery for a lot of it. There's definitely a lot of comparisons you can make, and I like I said, I think it comes together and ultimately tells like a pretty fun and compelling story that you can actually pull a lot out of, even if for a lot of the time watching it, you're just kind of laughing along with it and just enjoying your time because it is ultimately still like a big budget blockbuster. That looks really good too. Like this, I saw it in Dolby and it was took up the whole screen. A lot of cool audio design things where there's like conversations in big rooms and you'll start hearing side characters who aren't on the screen, but like positionally in the room, they would be behind you. And so like their voices are coming from behind you. So if you can see it in like a really good theater, like a Dolby theater that has like really good sound, or if you have a surround sound system and you're watching it at home, I think there's some like really neat things that they did with the sound design in this movie too. Yeah, I think I might leave it there for spoiler free thoughts. Maybe I'll talk in more detail, more spoilery detail at a later date. But I highly recommend it. I definitely think everyone should go watch it. It is currently my number one movie of the year. Granted, it is early in the year, but it was around this time last year that Dune Part 2 came out, and that was my number one, and it never moved. Do I think that it has as good of a shot to stay number one? Probably not, but I do think it'll end up being ranked quite high at the end of the year.